Um, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Hope y'all are, I need to, no, there we go. Now we're live. Howdy, everybody. Welcome to another community office hours. Today, we're going to be talking the CDK for Terraform. I'm going to be your host. My name is Taylor Dolezal. I'm one of the developer advocates here at HashiCorp. And with me today, I've got Daniel and Ansgar. This is a HashiCorp event, so we do abide by a code of conduct. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up here in just a second, but hope y'all are ready to have some fun with CDK for Terraform. Should be a lively discussion today. We have some demos and some other questions to go through. But yeah, it should be fun. If you do have any questions for those of you joining us along today, please be sure to put those in chat and we'll be sure to get to them. Should be a lot of fun. Here's our code of conduct and our community guidelines. Really just simplifies down to please be excellent to one another. We're here to have a wonderful time and discuss all things, and works best when everyone is respectful of one another. So please keep that in mind. If you do want to read up a little bit more about our community guidelines, please feel free to visit that link at the bottom, hashicorp.com/community-guidelines. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and find my Zoom. Make me have a good time. I'll go ahead and stop that share, and yeah, would love to kick it over to you, Daniel and Ansgar. If you could give us like your elevator pitch. Who are you? What do you do here at HashiCorp? And just some fun facts about you. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, so I am Daniel Dreyer. I'm the engineering manager for the CDK for Terraform team. I've been at HashiCorp for about 1.5 years now. And my fun fact is I signed up for an involuntary hobby by buying a really old house. So I love fixing it. I love doing that kind of handy work. I think that's it. Ansgar, you want to take it over?
Sure. Yeah, hi, I'm Ansgar Mertens. I recently joined the CDK for Terraform team this month, actually. And I haven't even thought of a fun fact yet. I don't have this mandatory hobby that Daniel described, although the flat doesn't fall apart, but I also like to improve it where I can. And yeah, besides that, I really loved the last weeks getting onboarded and on this whole project infrastructure, everything that came with it. It's a great ride so far. And yeah, thanks for having me here today.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. I'm not sure if that's a treasure map behind you in your house, but hope that you find some fun things in the attic or something like that.
Constantly.
One of my first questions that I have for y'all today is, Daniel, I'll probably direct this at you, is for people newer to the CDK for Terraform project. I personally have talked with quite a few people familiar with Terraform. And when I talk about CDK for Terraform, sometimes I see an actual question mark above their head. Would love to get kind of your insight. How do you go about explaining the CDK for Terraform for people that have never heard about it before, people that are just, might have heard about it, but don't really understand how it works?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So CDK for Terraform is a way to do infrastructure as code using a high-level language. So all of us know HCL. We are comfortable with it. We're familiar with it. It's a declarative approach for defining infrastructure as code. What CDK for Terraform allows you to do is to use TypeScript and JavaScript and C# and Java and soon enough Go to manage your infrastructure as code. And what is one of the things I think is particularly cool about it is that it's actually using Terraform, right? So the way it works is it uses a library called JSII that AWS made for the AWS CDK project to generate bindings and then to synthesize output. And in this case, it synthesizes your, say, TypeScript configuration code into JSON formatted Terraform configs. You don't need to worry about that when you're using it. The CDK for Terraform CLI wraps Terraform, but under the hood, it's driving Terraform. And so the cool thing from a usability perspective is you're not making like a giant switch of your whole project away from HCL. You can have one set of teams that are using HCL and making modules, another team that's using TypeScript. Say if it's a front-end team that is comfortable using that already, they can define their infrastructure in there. And they can consume all the existing Terraform providers. They can consume all the existing Terraform modules. They get converted over on the fly to CDK for Terraform. But the teams that are being consumed, they don't need to care about it being used from a different language. And those teams can also use the synthesized modules that you're building in other languages. So the teams can work together that way, and you don't need to switch over a whole organization. Each team can just work with the language they're most comfortable with.
I think that's really important. And I every day that I work here at HashiCorp, I always catch myself with one of our core pillars and our core, understandings is focus on the workflow, not the tool, the technology. And I think that offering something that has HCL support versus the CDK for Terraform is exactly that principle, right? Is focusing on that workflow, and it's really great to see more people coming to Terraform in a way that we just haven't seen before. So it really always has me excited to see newer people entering the community, asking questions about how to work with infrastructure, and immediately being in a context that they understand. So I think that's just really exciting to see. And thank you for that breakdown too. Definitely hoping more and more people choose to explore the CDK for Terraform. So you mentioned a few different programming languages that the CDK for Terraform supports today. Do you have any idea about what some of the next languages that will be added will be? I know that kind of correlates heavily to the JSII.
Yeah, absolutely. So upstream JSII just introduced an experimental version of Go. That's the big one. So we are planning on introducing a similar sort of experimentally flagged, like, be careful, it could change, it will change, but a version that you can play with in 0.4, which will be something in the 1 month out timeframe. So that's the next one. I don't want to make any commitments to future languages. But Go is definitely the one that most people ask us about, and AWS, and so that's what they've prioritized.
I can only imagine it becomes more and more fun with all of the examples that exist to add in those other programming languages and kind of have an understanding on some of the quirks and dark corners, sharp edges of some of those situations.
So this is actually an interesting thing. Again, upstream, the way the AWS folks handle this is they have a library, I think it's called JSII Rosetta. I don't remember exactly, and they actually do programmatic translation of their examples. And so Sebastian, who isn't here today, Sebastian actually wrote a neat tool called HCL to CDK, I think, or to TF, which can translate HCL into the TypeScript equivalent.
Interesting. I've never heard of that before.
So, yeah, we could demo that at some point for this show, because what I think is really cool about this project is that because all this translation is possible, a bunch of the manual work of maintaining a bunch of examples, there's a really good opportunity to automate that.
Very interesting. It always astounds me to hear about developments like that, and And that's really sounds fantastic. I feel like that'll make it even easier to explore if you do have those HCL examples.
Honestly, it's kind of magical. Like to be able to pick up some HCL and whoop, you have some TypeScript. It's like the first time I saw it, I was like, whoa, did that really just, I had to run it I had to run through I was like, this can't possibly work. And I ran through it. I was like, wow, it actually does. This is super cool.
Well, everyone, I think I might have just found my weekend project. This sounds this sounds like a lot of fun. Awesome. That's going to be so when it comes to the CDK for Terraform, we just saw a 0.30 release about 8 days ago. Do you have any kind of like TLDR or just kind of notes about what that contains or some of the workflows that enables?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you the TLDR and then hand it over to Ansgar, who has a really slick demo of everything I'm going to tell you about. So there's 2 headline features. One of them is multiple stacks. So the idea of, we all know what, people talk about environments or stages or layers in an application. These are all sort of different words for some group of resources that are managed together. This might be, and it's really common in HCL Terraform to use, either fully different folders for this and different state files or different Terraform Cloud workspaces, or to use really aggressive targeted applies to separate out, because you may want to destroy one layer of the application and recreate it, like say your app servers, without also destroying your persistence layer and blowing away your database. And so that's one set of use cases for sort of grouping resources together, creating and destroying them. There's another use case if you have different stages. So maybe you don't actually want to do all your changes in production. You should. It's pretty cool. It's, it sort of big confidence flex to just do everything in prod. But if your boss isn't okay with that, you might want like a development environment, a staging environment. This is something people already do in Terraform, but what's really cool in the CDK approach and what's possible as of 0.3 is you can define those in code, right? So and so we call those stacks. So you can define stacks that could be, the same application getting deployed to different regions, to different stages, different layers of an application. So 0.3 introduces the concept of stacks native to your configuration. So you're not like wrapping it in a shell script or a folder. You model it in your code and then can explicitly create and destroy them. So that's the one part you're going to see Ansgar demo. The next part that I have to I'm delighted. Ansgar has been here for, what's it been, 3 weeks now, 3.5 weeks, and shipped a feature in the release and is going to demo it. I think this is pretty cool. And he added a feature for remote templates. So the use case here is, rather than sort of writing a bunch of boilerplate every time you're deploying, let's say you have like a central team managing how standards around how applications are deployed, they can have a couple of standard templates that they push up to GitHub. It's available as a zip file. You'll see in the demo Ansgar does, it prompts you to fill in some default values, and then it templates out all the code that you need to get started, and an application team then can just fill in the specifics of what they need for theirs, and they have a good starting point. So those are the 2 headline features. Ansgar, do you want to show folks what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen real quick. I'm gonna add the browser and the code. So should be visible, I hope.
Looking good.
So yeah, if you're using the CDK, Daniel already said that with the remote template feature, now you can initialize your project not just from the templates we built. For example, there was a request and we added that template for Python, and there was a request to add some different way of working Python template. So that was the first thought of, oh wow, this could be really useful. And yeah, I made use of that new feature for a different example that I built as something that came to my mind in the past when I worked with Terraform was always, oh wow, all those different providers and modules, and they always inspired me to build something. And so I had a stroll at the supermarket of modules, and this time I picked DigitalOcean. And yeah, that's what I'm going to use for this example, for this demo about the two new features that we added. So I'm having an empty project or an empty folder. I already opened it, so we can see the code soon. And I'm going to do CDK TF init. This time I'm going to use local state for the sake of just demoing it over here and run that. So I've got the CDK TF CLI installed already, and I've got Terraform installed as well. And the CLI, if I init a new project, asks me what do I want to use as a template. We can see those predefined templates from us, and the new option that I added, the number 6, to add some URL to it. And I built a demo template that we can also have a look at later on, of which the link I'm going to put in here. So if you have code on GitHub, you always get some zip for your code base with it. So I'm just going to use that as my zip file that's containing my template code. What the CDK TF CLI does is it's just downloading it and using it as the base template. And then, as Daniel said, it's going to ask me a few things about my project. So mine will be named Demo Office Hours April 20. So as my current folder name, I will keep that, and I will also keep this default description. Now it's installing the Npm modules. As my example is based on TypeScript. So I'm using that. So I've got some help text over here that tells me what I can do. It's also part of the template. So if you're building your own module, you could put some more emojis in there if you want to, for example. So we could now have a look at the folder structure. So those of you that already know the CDK for Terraform will see the CDK-TF JSON file as quite familiar. This is kind of our entry point, our main config for our project. For this project, as we're using TypeScript, it states that at the top, of course. And we are having in line 5 our Terraform provider, the DigitalOcean one. What the CDK for Terraform does is it generates the provider bindings if we use some provider. So we can run a command for that. So there's CDK TF get, which will look at my JSON config and generate for all of the providers. So now I got a new directory with .gen, and this contains the providers / DigitalOcean folder, which has all those magic building blocks I can just reuse that already existed. And that's also what my example did. So all those constructs can be used, and I don't have an empty template, but rather one that has some code in it, which I'm going to show you now. Just going to close this up. For Node.js, I choose main TS or for TypeScript as my entry point. This is my code for my infrastructure. I'm using the DigitalOcean provider and an app. As this conflicts with the CDK TF app, which wraps everything, I renamed the import, but yeah, that should not be that complicated. And I'm importing from the generated provider that I just generated. Yeah, further down comes my stack, beautifully named, which already contains some infrastructure. It's very similar to how you use Terraform. So I'm having a DigitalOcean provider in here, as you would do with HCL, and I'm having a DigitalOcean app. An app is some kind of abstraction that DigitalOcean uses to, group some services together that build an application. So for this demo, I picked a simple example that has a single Node.js service with some, or deployed from some kind of Git repo. And I just used the example one they had. You would change this to your code or as soon as you're working with it. And I'm outputting the endpoint, so where my app is running in the end as a Terraform output. So we've seen this template feature now, but Daniel also talked about multiple stacks. So where are they? Just a short scroll down and we can see my stack twice. So as of this new Terraform CDK for Terraform release, we're supporting deploying multiple stacks. Previously, you could just have a single one and it would only, I think, synthesize the second one in that case. But now we can have them both. We just need to make sure they have different names. And those names are also generated from my template. So I've got one with the development at the end and one for production. So that is the second use case that Daniel mentioned for having multiple stacks. Or one of them, I think, was the last one. And I supply some configuration, so the dev environment and the production environment to the my stack that is used as variables inside of the stack. So I've got this config interface defined that just sets so some names of the app and services. And the deploy branch, it's the same, but you could switch that if you want to have a simple setup with some development branch and your main branch go to production, for example. For the sake of this, it keeps simple and do not spend so much money. The instance size is also the same. So production is not very heavy, but for this example, it should be enough. So I already touched synth a bit. And those of you who've worked with the CDK for Terraform before know this. But there's this command CDK synth that runs the step that makes Terraform JSON code out of my TypeScript or any other language defined infrastructure. So I ran this, and new as of this release it tells us about the stacks it founds, and it generates them in the cdk.tf.out directory. So if I look over here, just take the first one, we can see the JSON that is used by the Terraform that's running under the hood. With DigitalOcean, this DigitalOcean app, it's basically kind of the same as we've seen it in our code base. With some metadata, so we know when errors happen, where they came from. So that was the synth part, but having our infrastructure running somewhere is more interesting than having it locally in a JSON file. So let's go CDK.tf deploy. And we got to pick the name of the stack we're going to deploy. That is something, that is something that's going to be approved in the future, that we can supply multiple names and just deploy them. But for now, we just have to say which one. So what is it proposing? It wants to create a DigitalOcean app. Sounds about right. So I'm gonna go ahead and say yes. And while it's running, you can see I also shared a second screen. You should see DigitalOcean now. All right, I'm gonna hit refresh. So it should be there already. We can see the app that we are going to deploy less than 5 seconds ago. And if we click on it, it's still working. So it's currently checking out the Git repo, building the Node.js and so on. But that's all the magic that's happening over there. That's not so important to us now. But it's still running while it does that. And the thing we are waiting for right now is this Terraform output, which tells us the default ingress output from the DigitalOcean resource or app resource, which is in the end the URL where we can finally see it live. So that is still running. Let us look at that service. I hope it's not so slow and taking time for me now, but it was quite fast previously. So it's doing all the magic that I didn't have to build myself.
I know that's some of the most difficult things, Ansgar, in development are, what is it, naming, cache invalidation, and waiting for things to be ready.
Yeah, I noticed that quite a lot. Luckily, it's not some big kind of database or something. Yeah, but let us have a short look at the code. This is going to be a bit more technical, something about the background that happened with the multiple stacks. So besides the CDK tf.out directory now having stacks subdirectory for all those CDK tf JSON Terraform config, it also supports a manifest file, which just contains the information about our stacks, where they reside, where this file is, everything that could be configured in the future. And yeah, besides that, we also have the Terraform demo office hours quite long. I don't know if you can see the overlay, but development.tfstate. So we are having the tfstate file in the root as well, and this time it is named. So if you have an old project with the previous project with the CDK for Terraform and used some version like CDK for Terraform 0.2, your stack is going to have some other name or your state file. And there also will be a warning if you run it the first time. But that's something you might encounter if you come to get to use finally multiple stacks, something that was requested by lots of folks. And yeah, DigitalOcean is taking quite some time, but it did a jump. So yeah. That definitely ran fast yesterday, but it isn't that hard. So besides the stack being in that directory and the state file being there, only small changes to the commands happen. So if you deploy something or if you destroy something later on, you have to supply the name of the stack. If you don't, it tells you which names are available. We could make that code complete in the future. That would make sense. I already wrote that down when I worked with it because I just wanted to have it. But yeah, so this enables you to define different stacks for production, to make the blast radius a bit smaller, like Daniel already said. So if you have your database and you want to destroy your application servers, and yeah, just keep talking until it's done. Maybe you have some questions already. Feel free to ask them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ansgar. If you have any questions in the audience, you're viewing with us right now, please feel free to throw those into chat and we'll talk through that. There were a couple of questions asked during the, while we were talking, and tried to answer those in the chat already. Those questions covered were, are there any more clear timelines for when a Go CDK will be released? The short answer to that is not really right now at this time. Right now, it's still being developed, and so still kind of working through that. Yeah. We got asked the name of the tool that helps convert from HCL over to CDK, and noted that it's not an official project right now. Right now, we're tracking that in a GitHub issue, but pasted in the link to that GitHub repository. And then a question about any materials for Python that might be available. And in that, we pointed over to learn.hashicorp.com, which is a great place to learn about all of our tools. And whether it be, if you just want to get an understanding of how to work with the CDK for Terraform, Nomad, Console, Vault, just about everything is there. With different focuses and learning tracks on Kubernetes as one example, or if you want to take a look at your cloud, AWS, GCP, we have that there as well. So feel free to check that out. There is a lot of content there to go through. I don't think I've talked with anyone who's watched every single video or gone through every single tutorial just yet, aside from the education team. But if you do, please let us know in the chat.
Yeah. Finally deployed. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to jump a quick clarification in there. So there isn't a timeline for a production stable version of Go support, but the experimental version, we are hoping to get into CDK for Terraform 0.4, which will be approximately in a month. So some initial version should be available fairly soon. I just can't promise when it'll be stable.
Awesome. Yeah, and as the whole project currently is kind of an experimental or pre-production state, yeah. So, going back to the DigitalOcean part, the development stack finally deployed, and I was so fond of just saying, well, deploy production as well because it could take some time, so I didn't talk about it. So we can see over here that we now have printed the endpoint, which points to this URL where our application is running. And if we go over here, we can see the sample application, the folks at DigitalOcean built, which has some text on it and some links. So something is working there, servers are doing work. And over here, we can see the live app.ul app as well. And now also the in progress production one is also running. So yeah, and I just said, well, give production a go as well. I can also do a destroy to remove the development in the meantime. Maybe I'll just do that. Oh, I don't have an API key over here. Maybe I can't do that because I have local state and I've configured DigitalOcean via my local environment in that terminal. So I'm not gonna paste that now, so others could just write it down and use my account for their servers. But it's done. So this one was faster, maybe because the name production was in there that scared them. So let's issue a different command. Now we're done with development, the development stack, because maybe someone put something in there that we just want to remove. And now we are going to do CDK destroy with the name of the stack. And this allows us to also remove infrastructure. So the same as with Terraform. And I'm going to do a yes on that. And this is hopefully faster. It is. And removes my development. So the development stack. So I don't have to pay for that. And I'm going to do the production one soon as well. But I think I'm going to drop the link to my, or I'm going to get the link to my repository for the template in the chat. But I'm also going to have a short show of that. So if you're fast, you can also type it. This is what some template for the CDK for Terraform could look like. I just want to show shortly to those who might be interested in that. And I have a README which tells how to use it, and which in itself was not included in the template when it was initialized with our project. But I've got this template folder. The name is arbitrary, but it looks for the CDK JSON, our magic file that makes everything work. So it finds this folder as a template, and those files are going to end up in our repository that we initialize. And we are having some docs over at our CDK for Terraform repo that describe how to build a template or how a template works. So there will be some tutorial in the future for those who are interested, but for the time being, one can have a look at, for example, these files or the built-in templates. So they look similar to the code we just had with some variable stitching going on. And that's already about it. So that would be the end of the demo part. If there are further questions, feel free to shoot them. Otherwise, I would stop and get back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ansgar. That was fantastic to see using DigitalOcean and just being able to really just stand up, different stacks and kind of what that entails. I saw that and wondered how it stacked up personally a little bit earlier when I read about that. Speaking of just stacks, I know this project is a little bit early on as a question for both of you, but have you seen this project used so far in ways in which you didn't expect, whether that be a little, like a small way, you're like, oh, I can't believe people are using it in this way, or, people are using it for, like making a sandwich or pizza or something like that.
Should I go or do you want to
Ansgar, yeah, you mentioned an interesting one earlier.
Yeah, I heard about something. I don't know the specifics, but I know that a company uses it and they don't even use our CLI. So I hope it was not because the CLI is the reason, but I think, and that is the reason as far as I know, that they are using the CDK library, the Npm package that also is used by the library directly to generate the Terraform JSON with that. So yeah, they're not even using this CLI, but that other part directly, so they can instrument it in any way they want to. So as it's, just code in the end. But I don't know the specifics, what they are doing with that in the end, but that could be quite some interesting use cases over there.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see different ways that people use it, especially as more programming languages get added. Seeing there's already quite a few Easter eggs out in the community when it comes to all of these programming languages and some fun things on that front. So very, very excited to see as we go into future versions and get those additions, what people come up with. Awesome. Thank you. When it comes to 0.4, I know we just launched 0.3, but looking forward to 0.4 and some things beyond, what kinds of workflows are you looking at enabling for end users, practitioners, and weekend hackers?
Yeah, so 0.4, the big headline you're going to see is the experimental Go support that I mentioned. I don't quite want to lock us into an exact time frame for some of the other cool stuff that's coming up, but some of the stuff that's on our mind is sort of a next set of improvements around multiple stacks. So right now you can make manual cross-stack references, but it won't do that automatically. So that has the implication that right now you have to stand up one stack at a time. And so we can't figure out like the right ordering for that to happen. That is something that we want to be able to do and we plan to do. And there's a surprising amount of sort of work under the hood that I think will have some cool side effects as well, like probably a better handling of Terraform native functions will fall out of that in some form. One area that I definitely want to see us work on is sort of more opinionated CI workflows around using Terraform Cloud. Right now, you can use CDK for Terraform with Terraform Cloud, but the question of how do I do this in CI is a little bit of an exercise left to the user. And so I want to get that written up, see if maybe we can provide some GitHub actions, that kind of thing, to get a highly opinionated workflow going there, or a few of them, and see what people end up using. By the way, I'm going to plug here, if folks are doing this or are interested, get in touch, because there's more than one way to do this. There's a lot of folks using these tools in CI already. I want to hear your experiences. I want to talk. And one next plug is, and the next area of work is something that in the AWS CDK, they call L2 constructs. So this is one of the really, really cool things about using a higher level language, the whole point of using higher level languages is to be able to build abstractions, right? You build abstractions on abstractions. This is like fundamental to software engineering. And so the AWS CDK has a bunch of L2 and L3 abstractions. So higher level abstractions built on top of just the raw resources. And tomorrow at the CDK Day event, Ansgar is going to demo an interesting sort of conceptual experiment for granting access, an abstraction for granting access that will work across cloud resources. So slight spoiler alert, you will see him demo an experimental version, a prototype of an abstraction where you say, resource A, grant access, resource B. And the question of, I have to write some IAM, I have to write some DigitalOcean firewall rules is abstracted, and it finds the right grant strategy. So if you want to see more, go to his talk tomorrow. I'll make sure we have some links for that. But that's a substantial area of work, and it's something I think that is a really, really cool area where CDK for Terraform, because of the many, many, many existing Terraform providers that we support, the question of how do you even build cogent abstractions that span many, many, many different services and cloud providers, this is like a really challenging, interesting project that'll take a while to think through. And I think this is a really exciting first step.
Agreed, and that'll be fun. I'll have to check out the CDK Day, and I'm really excited on all fronts for everything here. That's it's like, yes, even better, even better. Unlike the clouds we deployed to, I still think one of the best features about Terraform is being able to stand up a stack, when you're trying to experiment with something, and then being able to actually spin it back down or remove it so that you don't get that unexpected bill at the end of that billing cycle. Fantastic. That should be fun. That should be fun. There was one question that came up, and I'm not too familiar with this ecosystem or with this tool set, but it was, is there a NRWL NX plugin for this? Might have to build one.
No, I don't believe there is. But I would say to the person asking the question, feel free, reach out to us, post on Discuss, post on issue on our GitHub, email me, ddreyer@hashicorp.com. I'll make sure that's up. And I would love to, I'd love to talk and understand.
That's yet another wonderful thing working here at HashiCorp, and just watching all of these tools get to 1.0 and beyond is building it with the community. It's if at the end of the day, we really want to make workflows easy for you. So if there's something that you want, or if there are problems that you want to solve, that's something that we all are very eager to talk about. So please at us. Contrary to the popular statement, please don't add us. We love talking about the tools and ways we can make things better for you. Awesome. One of the things that I've been asked a lot about working with Terraform and different users within the community is ways to import state. Terraform has gotten to this place where it's an industry standard tool, and there are a lot of people that want to use it. Unfortunately, they have the situation where they have all of this infrastructure already set up. So there are some tools out there that are not official HashiCorp tools. Terraform does allow you that ability to import, but when you have a lot of resources or a lot of clouds, a lot of accounts, it can be a lot of work to get that done. When it comes to the CDK for Terraform, it seems like it might be a pretty good fit for some things on that front, especially when using different programming languages. Is there anything different that you can note between you using the HCL version of Terraform or the CDK for Terraform, particularly when it comes to importing state?
So I want to differentiate there, because I think the tools you're talking about are tools that import in the sense of generating HCL. So that would be super cool. I'm super into it. We don't have that yet. What I can offer there is, because CDK for Terraform wraps Terraform, you can use standard Terraform commands. And so you can go ahead and sort of escape out, use Terraform import. There's a normal Terraform state file, the configuration files that get generated. So the workflow there is you go and synthesize your configuration. You end up with a JSON formatted Terraform config. You end up with a standard state file, and you run a normal Terraform import against that config and state file. We don't currently wrap import, and we don't have like a particularly opinionated workflow around that. What I would ask there is, this is just not, definitely it's something that's needed. It's just not at the top of the feature requests we've been getting. And so with this, and I think with all kinds of features, like as folks are using CDK for Terraform, like if you go and try and use it and you hit a wall, or there's a roadblock, or there's something that is preventing you from using it, not just at all, but is preventing it. Our goal, the vision is this should be super idiomatic for everyone's development workflow. This shouldn't be awkward. So if like, you shouldn't have to bail from what feels like an idiomatic TypeScript or JavaScript or Python or whatever you're using development experience. So file issues, tell us what you want, and reach out. I love to talk. And so please reach out. And that goes for import and any number of other features.
And I think that you hit upon something that was really just a great point, Daniel. And that's the fact that it's when you import something with Terraform right now, it's two steps, ultimately. It's actually importing that state so that you have that within your Terraform state, and then having it represented either in HCL or in TypeScript or whatever programming language that you use for the CDK. And I think that's 100% kind of the area where I've heard people having some issues, or that want to import things. And usually it very much is that it's like might be a couple resources, and so that's pretty easy, especially if it's like 5 things or under 10 things, 10 resources when it comes to a specific cloud. It's either that kind of use case, or I hear about the thousands, hundreds of thousands of resources, and I don't envy that workflow whatsoever right now. But definitely want to make that easier. I know there are some unofficial tools out there in the community for helping with that kind of workflow. But yeah, definitely something that I want to talk on a little bit more as well. Going into the future, and would love to talk with y'all on that front. Cool. I didn't see any other questions come in. We do have about 10 minutes left. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to throw those into the chat, and we'd love to get those answered. With that, I've got one more question prepared. We can end a little bit early if there are no more questions, but my question for both of you, and whoever has the answer ready, feel free to answer first. But kind of going off the beaten path when it comes to technology, if you had to pick a song, or just really any form of media, I guess I could expand that too, that represents the personality of the CDK for Terraform project, what do you think that would be? Either song, painting like Mona Lisa. What do you think? And yeah, take your time.
That will fill the last 10 minutes.
All right, so I noodled on this one, and I'm gonna have to say I'm a big fan of synthwave music, and so I turn this over, and I gotta come out to the entire soundtrack. Taylor, have you watched? It was a few years back. Have you watched Kung Fury?
Yes, I have.
Sure? Yeah, the entire soundtrack for that.
That's good choice.
I have the level of like energy and enthusiasm that I've seen Sebastian and Ansgar come into this with. And by the way, shout out to Daniel Schmidt, who is joining the team on Monday and opened a PR yesterday to improve the docs for setting up our development environment. I was like, wait a minute, it's like, what time is it in Germany? Like, why are you why are you doing this? But I am like, the level of energy these guys have coming in is awesome. And so I think that sort of like, I don't know, that pump up vibe that I got from that movie and that soundtrack, I'm definitely feeling working with this project.
I think that's a great pick. I have to admit that I oftentimes for coding also hear synthwave. So a friend of mine has a great playlist, and it's even called coding synth. So it's supposed to be for that. So definitely a great pick.
Absolutely love it. I'd have to say from all that I've seen from both of you and Sebastian and the rest of the community, personally, I have to go with Eye of the Tiger because I just imagine instead of Rocky running up the steps in the movie, I imagine the CDK running up the steps and just getting really pumped, training for the big infrastructure deploy. Just because a little bit of an underdog, HCL is pretty well established, and CDK is kind of coming up in its own right. So kind of a little bit of an underdog, but I think it's gonna win the fight. Very fun to see.
Big fan of cheesy 80s rock as well.
Yeah, if we could get more montages when it comes to coding, that'd be really awesome. Awesome. Cool. We have a question from Sam Cullen that says, will people be able to build L2 and L3 packages and publish them to NPM?
That's an awesome question. So the look, we don't have any L2, L3 constructs for CDK for Terraform yet, but the whole strategy for how we're going to go into this is iterative and experimental. So, it's a big enough project on the AWS side for them to build L2 and L3 constructs for their own ecosystem. We're talking about something an order of magnitude bigger, right? The fundamental questions of how do you build interesting, meaningful abstractions across if the entire surface area of everything Terraform can manage. That's a really interesting, challenging problem. And we're not going to solve that with like a waterfall big, like us doing it right the first time. This is going to be a matter of a lot of people, including the community, pushing out experiments and all of us pulling together on this one, because it's something I think everybody wants. And we'll definitely put in a lot of time and play a leadership role, but we're not going to sort of gatekeep this one. So yeah, absolutely. There's no way that we can build this without community contributions. And so my vision there is we're going to be pushing out experiments. I hope you're going to be pushing out experiments. And then we'll sort of iteratively curate that into some best practices and something that makes sense. And the first go of it is going to be a little bit wild, a little bit messy. There will probably be some competing ideas and competing visions, and that's okay. And then as we go and we figure out what actually works in the wild, I'm hoping we can curate those, and I think the community will converge on a set of abstractions that we can sort of officially point people to, but that's a few steps out. So yes, and if there are specific L2 or L3 constructs that you're interested in, like reach out, file GitHub issues. I feel like a broken record, but I can't emphasize too much. We want to talk. We want to pull you in. We have a Slack channel for community contributors. If you have a project, if you're publishing stuff, enhancing CDK for Terraform, like reach out. We want to pull you into this.
I think that's a great point. And again, these tools are open source tools, and so that communication needs to happen, for things to move forward. we can, adjust and do what we think is the best idea here at HashiCorp. But really, you do help shape things. And so making sure that your voice is heard, or opening that issue for something you don't understand or you might want to see, really, help us help you. Let's have those conversations. And again, also sounding like a broken record, we do love to talk. So please let us know, and feel free to reach out at any point in time. Awesome. And saw a response from Sam Collins that says, very keen. It's going to be fun. You got that right, Sam. Awesome. So I guess with that, any parting words of wisdom, Daniel or Ansgar?
Just try it out. If, for folks who haven't tried it yet, cdk.tf/learn is the quickest way to get to the Learn guide. Try it out. Let us know what you think. Let us know what your experiences are.
Yeah, I just wanted to say there's no magic to layer 2 constructs. So if you start to play with that, you will see that you can also build them. But to cover everything is going to be hard. So that's something that's not a single person's job, probably.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for tuning in today. I have one plug as well, and that is you are able to register for HashiConf Digital EU today. So please check out that website. That also is free. So if you want to check that out and kind of get an idea of some of the talks that are upcoming, that'll also be quite a fun time. It's going to be happening. It feels kind of wild. So I live in Los Angeles. It's already starting to get a little bit hot. So, already kind of feels like summer here, but that's when HashiConf Digital EU is going to be in the summer. So should also be fun. Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you so much, Ansgar, for joining us today. This is a fantastic stream. Really excited for CDK Day as well. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Community Office Hours. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, Taylor. Thanks, Ansgar.
Thank you so much.